Hi, everybody. This is Tammy Runker, Sky Woman, and I'm coming on today just to talk about this eclipse that is coming up tomorrow, Sunday, on September 7th, and also, of course, the Uranus retrograde station that was exact early this morning or last night, depending on your time zone. And even more broadly, what's going on across the month of September, a few days late. Um, and I had my own ideas about what I was going to focus on for this talk today. Um, and what came in, first of all, was a deeper listening. Um, and that what I've been feeling leading up to the eclipse, and really, this eclipse portal really opened with the new moon in Virgo back in August. And and then that really took us into this deeper territory of Virgo that closes on September 29th. So we've been really, the way I've been feeling it is um, that the true soulful frequencies of Virgo have been just saturating the field. Um, and so Virgo has been the number one energetics that I think we've really been feeling. And this is such an unordinary year. Everything this year is really deepened, is amplified in terms of its soulful medicine. And Virgo is no exception. So I just want to say, first of all, I have zero Virgo in my chart. I don't even have anything progressed in Virgo, I don't believe, in my chart right now. So it is kind of like this wild, mysterious territory for me. And one could say that if there's something that isn't native to us, that in a way we have fresher eyes or a fresher experience through which to, a fresher lens through which to cultivate gnosis around the mysteries of that thing. And I've just been so curious this month as I've been really dropping in. It's been, some of when we think about astrology, when I talk about astrology, I I actually more and more will touch on some of the themes that are pretty common in sort of conventional ways of looking at the astrological signs. So for example, we think about, and I don't just mean conventional, I mean like the kind of the basics, literal interpretations of the signs. So for example, Virgo is associated with health often and is associated with themes of health and of kind of day-to-day kind of humble realities, how we organize things. And that's all Virgo on a level. But also my training tapped me more into the priestess mysteries of Virgo and more of the kind of mysteries around her connection to the sovereign feminine and to Gaia herself. And so the way I learned about Virgo is that she is the sign that has the deepest taproot into the sacred mysteries of the living earth. And so, I always kind of feel Virgo in that way first. But then when I think about her connection to the human realms, I agree. Virgo and health are two deeply connected kinds of energetics. So I had a very personal experience of this where last week I got sick. I thought it was perhaps a tick bite. Sorry if it's TMI, but I'm in Missouri and we have these things. We don't have grizzly bears, we don't have any of those things out west, but we have terrifying ticks and chiggers, right? So I was concerned because I started having these flu-like symptoms. My body was super heavy. I was just exhausted and I had had a bite. And so I was concerned that it was Lyme or, you know, Rocky Mountain fever or something like that. But at the same time, everybody was saying that there was something COVID or something else that was going around. So I was just unclear about what it actually was. And this is what kind of happens for me is like many of us, I'm always kind of on this tension, this edge between the part of me that knows that I can use non-ordinary ways to heal my body. And I feel like I'm actually healing myself all the time, and averting potential sicknesses and diseases in my dreaming life. I think I do that. I do that through meditation. I do that through mostly listening to my intuition, my inner knowing about oh, you need to eat this today, or this is a tea you need to drink, or, you really need to cut down on this or that. So really listening to my body, I feel, is always kind of averting potential illness. It's kind of, common sense. In any case, with this is that fine line. Should I go to urgent care, because this is a tick bite and I might want to get some kind of doxy or something that they can give you. And so there's my rational mind that's just like, you need to do all you can um to avert the possibility that you're going to have some kind of bad kind of bug that comes, via this parasite. And there's all kinds of symbolic, energetic stuff with that too. Um, but then I also didn't know, I didn't know if that's what it was or not. So I did go to urgent care once and they couldn't do anything to help me. They didn't do anything to help me. And I ended up just feeling like, my instinct said don't go and you can sort it out yourself. Um, so what ended up happening is that I followed my body's lead and I just allowed myself to sleep really, really deep a couple of days. And and even in that sleep, then one day I had I just felt yuck, just low, slow, heavy, dense. And usually I try everything I can to move my body more, do whatever to get out of that space. And in this case, I was just like, no, let yourself just be low. Let yourself be dense. Let yourself feel whatever this ick is. Just let yourself be in it. So that's rare for me, but I actually did let myself just do that without judging it, without a story, just letting myself be with what was. And I came out the other side, as tends to happen when we allow ourselves these many descents, or, the descent process, which is territory of Virgo and the feminine mysteries. When we practice that in smaller ways, then we're building our musculature for the larger descents. And I'll be honest, I'm not the best at it. My Gemini moon is not crazy about um just, being in the heavy and the dense. I have a lot of strategies to get out of it, just like most of us do. In any case, it was wonderful because I I let myself sleep, I let myself go slow, I let myself stop. And in the middle of all of it, I really got my dreaming back. I'd lost my dreaming for a while. So from all of that, it felt to me like I was feeling the way that this earth sign Virgo, that is very much, the feminine signs, the earth signs, are about bringing spirit into matter for some purpose. And I was really feeling the ways that Virgo is really helping my body be heavier. And even the tick or whatever it was helping me to be heavy enough to go deeper into the earth and to stop. And it was a profound gift because, again, I came out of it feeling much more connected to my soul self. And I'd been missing that. It's easy to just be out here. And so that was a gift. It was also a gift because in the middle of all of it, it's like I heard my body saying, I love to heal. I'm so good at healing myself. Like I felt it. The heavier I could go in bed and just like go deep, let my body do what it does well, which is self-healing, then as I came out of it, again, I just felt more deeply connected to myself. And so, it feels like all of that has to do with Virgo. Virgo also has to do with this capacity to say no, to know what our no is. Virgo can be seen as a renunciate sign, meaning that it's the part of us that knows how to be in the world, but not of the world. So it's the part of us that has this inner monk or nun or hermit in the little hut, or the priestess in the temple. The part of us that is able to just be alone with ourselves and spirit or the natural world, the forces of nature, and just really sink deeply into the feeling of a connection to the whole. I was just down in the river bottoms and we're in a really dry spell. It's been about 4 weeks since we've had any kind of serious rain. And that's big for here. But what happened is that in the spring we had tons of early spring rains. It was very wet. And so because of that, down in the river bottoms, there's just a ton of overgrowth. It's like a big jungle with all these small cottonwoods and willows and all these weeds, not really weeds, but big plants. And so that's where all the insects are migrating. So tons of cicadas and katydids and other birds. So birds, some of them are almost like birds. So when you go down into the river bottoms, you can just, in certain places where the trees are really thick, You can just drop in and you can feel the wind, the kind of almost fall wind and the kind of cooling air. And you can hear all of these loud insects just strumming. And it's like the whole earth is just humming, and you could just feel closer to Gaia. There's just something about this time of year, the Virgo season, where you can just feel so deeply connected to her and the pulse of her and just in the rhythm of her. You just breathe her in. Um, so I've been just really feeling Virgo right now and really appreciating her. And the other thing about getting sick was that it literally, as I got deeper and slower and let myself do that, I could feel how when I was walking down the road, I just my whole body, like I was in my body, I was heavy kind of in my body, like my soul and my awareness was, I was really good at the interoception, like the feeling state within my actual body. And just the pleasure of that. So for me, that's part of what has felt like this kind of altered, it's kind of an altered Virgo reality because we are in the eclipse portal. So it's kind of there's an otherworldly sense about it that's kind of amplified. And then, of course, with Uranus stationing retrograde early this morning, not last night, that's we've been feeling that since last week. We'll be continuing to feel it for the coming week. So when you mix that all in with this otherworldly, like strange time dimensions of the eclipse season, then we're really in this dream state, and of course add to that that Saturn had moved into Pisces already, 29 degrees Pisces. So whoa, we are like, I mean, we're in this very altered reality right now. And I think often in these kinds of windows, I just, the world I want to live in, the world I want to help create is one where people get to have time during this sort of sacred timing. People don't have to work their asses off all the time in this kind of sacred timing, and they get to take time to just slow down, to rest, to just really daydream, because that's what I've been feeling, just wanting to daydream, soften my gaze, and just feel everything all at once. I'm actually really good at that. I love to do that. And it's my natural way, is very daydreamy. I used to get teased a lot for that as a kid. Um, but I'll always remember there was this study that Joseph Chilton Pierce wrote a book. He did a lot of research on children in play. And he was, in one of his talks, he recounted this study that was done on, I think it was toddlers. It was like something like 300 toddlers. I think it was in the 70s, maybe. And they were really tracking the ones who were just very, very happy, just really happy children. And just on every kind of marker, they were just really well, just really, joyful children, and trying to see what it was that these children had in common. And they said that the one thing they had in common is that they all spent a lot of their time just kind of daydreaming, kind of off in other worlds. And that was definitely me. And as I got older, they would, say I was spacey, I'm an airhead because I'm a blonde, so I was teased a lot for that. But, it's actually taken me almost this long, even literally last week. It was like another dropping in of, Tammy, it's okay. You can be that way. Like that's naturally how you are. Stop punishing yourself for naturally being someone who has that kind of softer gaze. That's Neptune on my Venus and on my Mercury, and it's a part of my gift. It's part of my inner genius. But boy, like a lot of our inner gifts, it has come with a really high cost. It always made me feel so different. And so gosh, it's funny, I'm feeling emotional about this. It's between that and brain injuries, or I'll just say concussions. I don't even know if they were injuries, but two major concussions I got when I was 11 and then 16, and then one I got this year earlier in January that was in the back of the head. It was the second one I've gotten since I was 16, and it really kind of brought up everything for some healing. But since that and doing a lot of deeper healing work this year, and then that more recent illness that had dropped me into this kind of altered state that I was becoming very aware of, this dream state. I think I think I'm recognizing how I've always struggled with not feeling like I was as smart, as intelligent as a lot of other people. And I've also been realizing that as an astrologer, um, because I have more of the Neptunian or almost like a Piscean way of cultivating astrological intelligence and inner knowing, it's more of a felt sense. And it's something where I get these, I merge with the information, but it's very right brain. Um, I've come to realize how much I feel like I need to prove myself or I need to be more linear. So this takes, when I'm speaking right now, I'm speaking about the more Pisces energy of this eclipse, right? So there's this more soft, and so that's part of it. And even just the Uranian energies, the eclipse energies themselves can feel more like that right brain kind of otherworldly energy. And, Saturn back in Pisces, this the North Node in Pisces with this eclipse tomorrow. The Pisces energy can feel very fuzzy, can feel very dreamlike, right? So it's very much like an altered state. But then, of course, we do have just the Virgo energetics that if you take away the element of the eclipse, Uranus, Pisces, all of that, and just look at the South Node in Virgo, there's also that energy that we are steeped in. And like any sign, there are elements of it that have been colonized. There are elements of it that of the expression of Virgo, the archetype of Virgo, the sacred being of Virgo, that have been kind of cut off or split off from the organic, essential nature of what Virgo truly is. And so colonized Virgo is kind of a workaholic, is really fixated on detail to a degree where you kind of everything it's a perfectionistic kind of way of being where there's this kind of rigid control where you have to get every single thing precisely right, and there's kind of this freak out if you don't, right? And also it can have to do with freaking out a lot about the body or health or obsessing about health. I mean, that's real. I have plenty of Virgo people in my life, and that is something that often shows up. But it's a desire to control everything that comes from this sense of being split off actually from the more organic Virgo way of being, of very naturally connecting to the web of creation, naturally connecting to the flows of the air, of the waters, of the animals, of the ley lines, of all of the different patterns of the natural world. Virgo naturally is in that web of creation. But what happens to Virgo is that we're living in this modern world where our whole societal framework is set up in out of harmony, in disharmony with the natural systems. And so Virgo often, because the Virgo part of us wants to be of service and wants to actually serve the rest of the community, human and otherwise, we are often having to interface with human systems that are erroneous, that don't work. So so Virgo has this kind of, can again go into this place of really kind of rigid control and trying to get everything perfect, and kind of process addiction. Those are some of the realms of Virgo. And so interestingly for me, I had this really phenomenal kind of opportunity land in my lap about a month ago where, and this is just still blowing my mind, where I was contacted by a friend here in my local community because she has friends who are these young ex-Amish individuals. And this woman, Mary, her father, who is back in Ohio, he's more traditional but pretty open-minded Amish. That he has comes from this lineage, this family that has been putting out an Amish almanac. It's been translated into English since they came here 100 years ago, but the information has come from a 200-year-old Amish almanac from back in Germany. And so this family has been responsible for printing, he'd say, like up to 22,000 of these almanacs in German and 12,000 in English that go out to all these Amish communities across the country. And this man's mother had died last year, and she was the scribe. She was the one who would track all of the star information and the moon information and the sun and all of the planetary alignments that have been passed forward through these generations. Somehow then I said, okay, I can help. Oof. So I'm piecing together all the moon that's not so hard. Moon phases signs, obviously, sunrise, when is the moon on the meridian? The things that they actually track was fascinating. And the simple way that they do it, the ephemeris that they use is also kind of mind blowing. And then they have this night sky information. And some of it, I don't know how old it is, but they're tracking when Vega sets in the west, and they're tracking, all these heliacal rises and sets of these different stars and occultations, and when the moon is at the maximum elongation, and at its maximum declination, all these different things that, like, it kind of blew my mind that they're tracking these things, right? So in any case, I have been spending the last few weeks trying to piece all of this together and checking, and so, but it's been very, very detail oriented and very Virgo. And so what I'm realizing is that my mind almost feels like it gets to relax by focusing on something very technical. And I'm writing a lot of it out by hand, kind of like when I first started to study astrology. The way I learned was by creating the outline for Kaylin Castell in what she called her celestial timings. And so with that, it was like every single day I would be tracking what was happening visibly in the sky, morning or night sky. For example, when the moon or a planet was within a certain number of degrees of a star, and how many degrees and how far apart. I was using, accessing another astronomical calendar, and I was just laying it all out. And it was, it's kind of meditative because it's just um and writing it out by hand and then putting it in the graphs. And so I realized that so much of my life really has been so Piscean and so Neptunian in the way that I orient, the way I create programs. It's very much ceremonial. It's very much about going into the other realms. But there's been this kind of balancing through doing all of this handwritten kind of ephemeris work and checking and double checking all these charts and all this information. And it's felt like, among other things, I'm connecting with my German ancestral line. It's like an ancestral healing journey. And I feel like I'm connecting to these Germanic star women from the past. So that's been a surprising gift. And I just wanted to say that in this eclipse window, with Uranus involved, what we can know for sure is that we don't know what's coming around the corner. There's going to be unusual surprises. And this is the deeper message that I kept getting for today, which was to develop the power of listening, really listening to our bodies, really listening to the signs and symbols around us. And I literally, in this very moment, come here, sweetie, come here. I have this beautiful little dog, not so little dog actually, who today when I was walking in the river bottom, this dog showed up out of nowhere and she followed me, and okay, sit. And she's some kind of a maybe Weimaraner, maybe a Ridgeback pit mix. She's beautiful. She's very sweet. She's very well trained. She had some kind of a collar on her, and I don't know who she is, but I've been posting everywhere online to and locally to see who she is. But she just kind of like followed me, and she's making herself at home here. And I had just said I wanted a dog. So who knows? Like, I have no idea. I mean, it's terrifying, honestly, for me to imagine having a dog. I've wanted one since I was a kid and I haven't had one, but this is my challenge to myself in this moment. When I first saw her, I'm really afraid of the commitment of having a dog. I'll be honest. I've never, as an adult, had one. But I've always wanted one. And so recently, though, and even at the beginning of the year, I had the insight I needed a dog, a puppy. And I've resisted because I know it's going to change my life massively. But I was just putting that out there. Actually, I was just thinking about it again. And then here she shows up. Now, for all I know, tomorrow somebody's going to claim her because somebody's trained her very well. She's a really well-trained dog, and she's very sweet. But for all I know, she came to me because she was sent by the angels because she's my dog. But the thing that occurred to me when she first came, and I was very resistant, she was scratching at the door, and I'm like, what are you doing? You're not my dog. What am I supposed to do? Was I thought, what if she is my dog? How would I know? Is my heart open enough? Am I open enough to the unexpected, to surprises, to miracles? Am I open enough to what the angels actually want to offer me moment to moment? Or am I always pushing it away? I tend to push things away. I'll be honest. I tend to be very controlling. This is what I've been recognizing about myself, is that I mean, not in all ways, but I'm just seeing the places where I can be, and I think this is very human, right? I'm not the only one, but so my question really was, if this dog is being sent to me by the angels, how would I know? And in my life in general, if I'm getting these, if something surprising is coming my way, am I quiet enough inside of myself? Am I tuned in enough that I can know if that's mine or if it's not my path? And I honestly, I struggle a lot with thinking, like all of us, we're all feeling what's happening in the world around us. And as my teachers taught me, there's three worlds that are simultaneously unfolding. And you have the upper world, the celestial, which is the spirit realms that are, kind of a higher understanding of what's happening. It's the part of us that really knows everything's unfolding as it should. That's the spirit perspective. I like that perspective. I like to live there. Obviously, I don't always live there, right? And that's what I'm saying. I also forget how to tune into that higher realm. Then there's the underworld, which is more the place where the deeper emotional transformations happen. It's where we experience deep grief, or that cultivation of, the healing of trauma. It's this deeper emotional, cathartic kind of transformational experiences. It's the places where we also have to surrender to experiences that are intended to help to remake us, to help us go through death and rebirth processes again and again and again. Um, so both of those are kind of states of surrender, but also can take us into states of ecstasy and connection to the soul and to the spirit. And then we have the middle world reality, which is really kind of, you could say it's 3D, or it's the place where we as humans have constructed our societies, our norms, how we operate in the world. That's where things like politics live, paying the bills, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, I am a person who tends to enjoy living in the upper or the lower worlds more. I don't love 3D, and I actually do believe that we're here to infuse this 3D material reality with the soulful wisdom from the underworld, the great below, and with the spiritual insight and illumination from the great above. I am an Inanna woman. That's what she does. That's what we do. And at the same time, I I I guess we can't do that unless we're willing to stand in the physical material reality long enough to bridge those worlds and bring these new frequencies in, right? Where was I going with that? So I get a little overwhelmed with the news. I get a little overwhelmed with asking the question. I've had so many elders in my life, a very important sister who are in myself and my past been very active, more active politically, more of an activist. Um, and I think that this is the thing I struggle with more than anything. And anybody who follows me knows this. I really authentically don't know what my role is in these larger fields right now. I don't know how to best show up. Um, but what I do feel more and more and more and more and more and more is that there is absolutely nothing more important than cultivating the ability to deeply listen, to really listening to the call of spirit. And when I say listen, it's not just going into our room and meditating, it's also going out into the world, going for that walk, moment by moment, step by step. It's like really practicing tuning in. What does my heart say about this? What does my spirit say about this? Is this a yes? Is this a no? And a lot of that has to do with unlearning. A lot of that has to do with releasing our addiction, our attachment to knowing all the answers and thinking that we are in control of everything. And also kind of, having all these rules and ideas about how it's supposed to work and what we think we want and need. I just, the astrology we're in right now is an unraveling, it's an unlearning, it's a dissolving process. And so, what's more important than anything else, I think, is to allow ourselves to be remade by life, is to allow ourselves to open our hearts, to be curious, to ask spirit to reveal to us, what the path is ahead. This is not a linear time. And we absolutely can't continue moving forward in the old ways. it's just, and in fact, I just have to say part of why I struggle with writing so much lately is, I mean, in writing in such a way that I'm trying to analyze or digest and put into some form of a neat form of writing what my insights are. It's so unwieldy. And so there's just often I just lately I find no words. There's no words to describe what we're going through. It's just very difficult. And I end up feeling quite inept as an astrologer, to be completely honest with you, because I so want to be of service. I so want my words, my stories, who I am, how I offer myself to you, to be of service in some way. That's the Virgo and the Pisces. But I can't just stay stuck for me in the information zone in the realm of analytical analysis. I just can't do that right now. And so my hope is that what I transmit is still useful. Um, and because I'm just, again, it's self-love for me right now too, and for a lot of us it is. And it's that self-love around how can I accept and honor that my gifts as an astrologer, as an oracle, are different, and that and I think it's also probably menopausal, like a change in the chemistry of my body. And it's again all of this Saturn, Pisces, Saturn and Neptune energy that I'm tuned into. But I think more than that, we are in a state change. We are all changing our state. We are all becoming new. Our bodies are shifting, our consciousness is shifting. What we're going through is beyond words. And so my deepest prayer is to continue to be connected to my soul, is to continue to be connected to divine, to continue to open my heart, to be curious, to really ask how I can serve and to show up for that, and also to have a sense of humor about it, because I can get so damn serious that I just feel like I'm supposed to be holding everything together. And I just don't really think that's true for any of us. That's an old program. And I do very much believe that even with everything, perhaps because of everything that's unfolding in the world around us, that embracing and moving toward what feels joyful, moving towards life and celebrating this experience of being alive is such a poignant and essential way of being. And it's so essential right now. And we're living in this kind of razor's edge of understanding on one level the precipice we're on as a species, and on the other hand, just really dropping in and opening into the blessing of being alive right now, the immense gift of these kinds of waves of healing and growth and awakening that we're going through. So it's just, there's just so much going on. And I think I'm going to leave it there actually. No, wait, maybe I won't. Let me look at what I want to focus on for September. I feel like it's the broad brushstrokes I want to focus on. Um, that is very Neptunian and Piscean. Um, I'm going to do a separate thing on the eclipse, the equinox eclipse on the 21st of September. But the one that's happening tomorrow, and you're probably going to hear this tomorrow or later, the blood moon, the total lunar eclipse or super full moon in Pisces. It is again, it is a very powerful eclipse. It's with the North Node, so it's really helping us to move forward into the territory of Pisces. And so just again, there's this sense of it's a sense of surrendering the ego. We're really invited to allow to fall away and just really invite the softening. The word softening, there's a listening, there's a softening, there's a allowing ourselves to be receptive to where spirit is trying to get our attention. I don't think there's anything more important than that right now, because the part of us that's afraid, that's separating out always from everyone else, just can't get us where we need to go. And I really feel like the angels are just all around us right now. Spirit is right next to us, just saying, hey, soften, get quiet inside, listen, and just follow your heart. And that's what's going to help us to move into a new time, to move into a new way of being. I mean, yeah, there's waves of grief that come with this time as well. And there's loss, and we have these beautiful human hearts. We're feeling what's going on around us. And there's also these waves of beauty and possibility. And I feel like the softening of the heart is going to continue to be massive. And I've said this many times, but I still, again, I haven't reconciled this within myself yet. There is a ferocity there is um, an energy of guardianship that is very much being called for from us. But I almost think that we've been so enculturated to a violent way of being in the world and seeing that as power. I think we conflate power with violence. And when I say violence, I mean even in subtle ways, like the ways we are trained to dominate each other, the ways we are trained to separate from each other, the ways we are trained to believe that our value and our worth actually come from the ways that we can successfully separate ourselves from life. We're trying to learn how to extract ourselves from a very toxic elements of culture and the ways we've been trained. And it's bewildering sometimes, I mean, because we really got one foot in one world and one foot in another. So it's challenging. Um, but to me, so I keep being shown, I keep coming back to softening the heart. And, I'll share one more brief story here about the phrase I was given for this eclipse and really for the entire month of September that I really do feel is bracketed by the deeper Virgo mysteries, that we are being dropped into the ancient Virgo mysteries with South Node in Virgo and 2 new moons in Virgo. There is some deeper organic Virgo, just incredible medicine that we are being saturated with. And so that phrase, develop the power of listening, the way that came to me was the same way that I received my spider medicine. Some of you have heard this story before. So it was back in 2018, and it was a few months after, really, it was in the midst of probably the most significant initiatory birth-death portal that I've ever gone through in my life. And it was several months after my hysterectomy, my surgery, which had been a rebirth that I had very consciously engaged as a rebirth, a death and rebirth ceremony. It was after the end of a very, very significant relationship in my life and the grief that followed. And it was, a couple months after all of this is a very pivotal moment in my life. And I was guiding a group through an online course that I called the Dream Healing Temple. And in it, as is the case with all of my courses, it's a ceremonial container in which people are given the tools to practice active dreaming, certain dreaming protocols, dream incubation protocols. And then we were literally working with the dwarf planet Chiron and Comet, the minor planet and Comet. I can't even keep up with how they've changed Chiron's designations a million times, but Comet/minor planet Chiron, and the asteroid Hygeia, who I'm madly in love with, and the constellation Ophiuchus. So these great three dreamers, this trinity of great healers in the sky, we were looking at them in our individual charts, and I was giving readings around that. And then also we were working with the activations of each of these planetary constellations and bodies as activated by the moon and other transits, because Chiron also was crossing that threshold between 29 Pisces and 0 Aries. So in any case, I was in the midst of this really exciting and really potent dream healing course that I was facilitating with these brilliant people, and my first cohort, actually. And in the midst of that, I had guided them all to go through and to develop a dream healing temple in their rooms. This was a challenge I'd given to them, an offering. So I did it myself, right? So I had done a sacred bathing practice earlier that evening, and then I had set up my room with crystals all around the room and sacred oils and essences. And so I was preparing my room as a dream healing temple. And I had also just received a reading from an individual who would become a very significant mentor and teacher for me in the years to follow. So this had all happened. And so this individual I had gotten a session from, we that night had been talking about me going on pilgrimage to Cozumel and to the Yucatan to work with Ixchel, the Mayan lunar goddess, a deity who I would later come to be very much in a devoted relationship with, and I still am. Um, and so that was our conversation. And then I had set up the Dream Healing Temple and I was preparing for bed and I'd had a cup of chamomile tea. And, just I wanted something really simple. I wasn't doing any artemisia or anything like that. Just kind of a subtle tea for the dreaming. And when how it is, these little like oracle, in a tea bag, I I opened the tea bag and I read the little message and it said, develop the power of listening. I thought, that's interesting. So then I actually had to go into my closet and get a pillowcase out of the closet and I put it on my pillow. And then I proceeded to, prepare to sleep. And meanwhile, I woke up probably 1, 2 in the morning and my ear was just stinging. It was just itching. I didn't think too much about it, but it was really uncomfortable. And then the next morning at about 6, I woke up because I was going for an early hike with a sister. And again, my ear was just itching. And so I was a little concerned and I went on this walk. By the time I was in the middle of the walk, I mean, it was actually really burning. So I took some plantain, which is a kind of a plant that is it naturally draws poisons, draws toxins, and I chewed it up. It's the best way to use it, actually. I put it in my ear during our walk, and which I knew was very effective. And then I immediately had a 2-hour astrological sessions when I went back to my house. And so I did this session, but I think I may have had to cut it off early because my ear was just pulsing and it was so painful. And so then I put ice and I ended up going to the emergency room and it ended up that it was a poisonous spider that had bit me. Now you can see I still have the mark of this spider bite. Um, and it bit me 2 times inside my ear. I know it's kind of intense. And so, and as it turned out later, I had actually seen the spider before. It was a big one. And it's a brown recluse. And, I moved out of that apartment not long after, and I found almost no brown recluses, but this one spider that my sister actually killed 2 days later in the house. I should have killed her, and I didn't. And I do respect the spiders deeply, but I also respect my own space. Um, when it comes to brown recluses, they are medicine for me that has to do with boundaries and the goddess. It's complex, it's multi-layered. Um, so in any case, I was bit and I went through a whole process of self-healing and extracting the medicines, the poisons myself, very painful process. And I ended up, even though I still am very clear that had I not done everything I could naturally, that I most likely would have lost the ear and I would have potentially had much larger problems because this kind of poison, this kind of spider is no joke. But it did, because there's not a lot of blood flow, I did end up needing to go in and get surgery on this ear because there was an infection. And so, in any case, that was my initiation to spider medicine. I've always had spider medicine, but at another level. And so, when I think of Virgo, I think of spider medicine. Virgo has a strong connection to grandmother spider in the southwestern indigenous traditions, and she is the weaver of the web of creation of life. And Virgo is like that. She is like a spider who is weaving this pattern of the sacred, this tapestry of life, of the patterns of the seasons and the stars, and of the way that the sun and the moon travel across the sky, and the way that the animals travel in their migratory patterns, and the ley lines and the dragon lines, and all the sacred patterning of this organic realm. Virgo is so deeply tuned into that pattern, and she is engaging in the co-creation with Great Spirit, with Mother Gaia, of this sacred pattern of creation. And so so the next morning after I'd gotten bitten, after I figured out what had happened, I immediately emailed this man who would become my mentor, who had given me the reading. And I said, what the hell just happened? I mean, I can't even figure this out. Like, what had happened to me? And I told him the whole story. I wrote the whole story, and he said in strong, bold letters, that's how much the goddess needs you to listen to her. That's what he said. And, I get a little teary. I just feeling that right now because I am a daughter of the goddess. And as much as I am in I feel like a continual state of wrestling with the Christian lineage and the distortions around the Christian lineage, as well as some of the gifts of the Christian lineage, very traditional Christian lineages that I come from on some level, because I do feel like in my deeper bone and root, I am more of the shamanic path, of the indigenous path, of the devoted to the divine feminine, including the dark aspect of the goddess. This lifetime has put me into contact with very different ways of viewing the world. And I have myself experienced very deep colonization of my own soul and spirit. And I'm continually working to heal that. And, it's that colonization that separates me from that awareness of, is this dog, how do I listen to the language of this dog and understand his soul and my soul? And if their souls are wanting to work together and play together right now, how do I trust myself? And that's why the dreaming is so vital. That's why right after my dad died in 2013, I was drawn to take a workshop with Robert Moss and to put it on my credit card and do this crazy thing I'd never done before. Go to the Big Island and study active dreaming. And because I knew deep in my soul is like what I want more than anything else is to be able to hear the voice of spirit coming from inside of me. And that tuning into the truth, the gnosis that I can only access through my own vessel. And to me, learning to work with the dreaming, when we really learn that, that is how we learn to drop into our own inner voice of authority and inner truth. So I've been on a journey just like many of us have, and it's not black and white. It's certainly not linear, and it's not perfected, as if there is such a thing. Um, and the decolonization process is not just like, okay, it's all done. I'm done. I'm good. I'm so attuned, and I'm just like connected into the spiral of life, and I'm just listening to my soul 24/7. And I feel like I see people all the time out there on social media who are just like, I've always been connected. I never disconnected. I'm like, wow, that's cool. That must be nice. That's not me. I've disconnected so many times from my soul, from Mother Earth, from my body, from my own inner truth. For me, it's a journey of forgetting and remembering again and again, and it's very painful. It's beautiful and painful, and every time I remember, I don't think I'm going to forget again, but I do. And, I know in the most spiritual traditions, it's understood that that's just how it works. Maybe my inner colonizer, my inner Calvinist Puritan self, bless that self, that beautiful ancestral lineage that gives me so many gifts. Maybe that part is the part that thinks I should do it perfectly. But in any case, so that question of or that phrase that came through again today, that develop the power of listening, I really do feel that that's in this eclipse portal with this Pisces energy of the eclipse and with Saturn back in Pisces and just the mystery, the great, and Uranus stationing, the great mystery, the very high spiritual celestial energies that we are in the midst of, and the timeline, the potential for pretty profound timeline jumping and bending and really working with Kairos time and working with the quantum, or however you want to say that, where we can be immersed in the dreaming and we can help shape it. But the way we help shape it is, I feel, by more of that receptive, feminine, deeper listening and attunement and responsiveness. And that requires a gentling. It requires a softening. And so for me, that's my directive right now is just how can I become more gentle? How can I soften my heart? How can I listen more deeply? How can I attune? Spirit, just show me, please show me, like moment by moment. How can I listen and just to be in that flow of the deeper listening process? It's a humbling experience. So for me, it's, I don't have anything clever to share about strategies right now. But I can just tell you that what feels essential to me is the softening of the heart, of the ego, allowing ourselves to be dissolved into a truer, a more heart-centered being. My prayer these days is is asking Spirit to help me to dissolve whatever separates me from love. And my desire is to allow life to purify my heart. I want a clean, clear heart, meaning that I want to let go and drop the burdens I'm carrying that hold me back from life and hold me back from loving fully. That's my deepest prayer. So, um, so I think that's what I have for now. And I just send so much love to every single one of you out there. Please do share a little bit in the comments. I would love to hear from you, to connect with you more, and to know who you are and what you're experiencing right now. These have been my experiences. But again, this is my filter, and hopefully, it resonates for you and it offers some support in some way, accompanying you on your journey. But please subscribe if you're not, and please do send, some kind of a note just to let us know who you are, what you're going through, and what's waking up inside of you. Um, and we're really all in this together. We are really, I believe we are coming into one heart, one mind. And what a journey. And, like many of you, I've had a lot of heartache in these last weeks. It feels like the more we develop spiritually, that the more painful it becomes to see the places where we close our hearts down and where we don't listen. I visited with my sister the other night, and at some point in the evening, she was sharing with me that I interrupted her, that I would cut her off sometimes. And it was really painful because I realized that I have a pattern with this sister. And I've had a lot of experiences with that lately of just seeing the places where I am not as present as I want to be. And then at the end of the night, it's like I I would have loved to have been so dropped into my body and into myself, my core essence, and loving myself too, right? So that I would be curious and open to just really asking more questions and hearing. And and we are all in different stages. And we actually had a conversation also about how when I was younger, my role in the family was that I often lived far away. When I came back, I would really prioritize one-on-one with people, and really these really potent, really deep connections, like really strong medicine of helping people feel very deeply seen and heard. And I would write in-depth letters and cards, that's what I used to do. And then I have an enormous family, and now I have a whole global community. And so I've had to give up that kind of intensity of connection because my circle has grown. And of course, I've narrowed as well. I've been learning to narrow again into really deep connection with a smaller number of people, and finding how I can connect in other frequencies, which that's a whole thing. That feels very Cancerian versus Piscean, because the Cancer part of us really does have to do with who we are as a human and how we care for the people in our closer human to human personal bonds. And Pisces is more how I just love each one of you out there. I love Mother Earth. I love all of humanity. My heart is just so full of love for the whole of creation. Um, those are two different ways of loving that are both accurate and real. Um, but in any case, so I've kind of overcorrected sometimes now, especially when I'm close to family and community, a really big community of people I've known for over 30 years, where I I find I become a bit defensive by actually over talking or oversharing and not wanting to be the one who's always listening. So it's very human, and I love myself through that. But I share that because, it may be that some of you have also had that experience of it's poignant, like we want to be deeply connected to ourselves and to others, and when we are empaths as well, and we can feel the intensity of the world, well, it's a poignant time to be alive. So, okay, so I'm going to complete now, and I'm going to send all of you so much love. I have this beautiful dog here. So, yeah, I'm so curious what's going to happen with all of this, and I'm just opening my heart and listening. So please share what kinds of surprises, eclipse, Uranian surprises, unexpected events are happening in your life. And let's build this community here. Okay, so much love.